challenges with the white collar jobs, right? Because intelligence is getting commoditized. I think physical work, I think, is not going away for quite some time. I think the mental work is what is being threatened, right? So if you are a developer, if you are a marketer, if you are a finance person, all these jobs are becoming extremely sophisticated because of AI, right?
Namaste, Adab, hello, and welcome to a new episode of Leisurely Baatein. My guest today is an entrepreneur who's working on some interesting things around artificial intelligence. So we're going to have a very interesting conversation today on artificial intelligence, its risks, its rewards, its impact on people and society as we live on. Arun, welcome to Leisurely Baatein. How are you doing?
I'm good, Shubhadeep. Thank you so much for having me here. How are you?
I'm always good, and I hope you're enjoying this bright and sunny morning in Kolkata.
Yeah, fantastic. Great to ride doing your leisurely baatein with a leisurely drive across.
Fantastic. So the first question I want to ask you, a thing which everybody today is talking, whether it's a social gathering or in conferences, in offices, is what will happen to the future of job, when as AI seeps in. How will we all protect ourselves? How do you see that?
Yeah, that's a very tough question and a good question. Nobody knows the right answer right now, but from where I see it and how I see it, I think there are two scenarios, right? One is, as a lot of people are saying, there'll be abundance and then we don't need to work, and we are going to do creative things because of abundance. Everything will be provided for, and the basic necessities and the basic ambition and the structure of society itself will evolve, right, with this change. However, where we are right now, I feel this is a very powerful tool which has come into our hands. Intelligence was a premium, till now, but intelligence is now a commodity, which means it will democratize a lot of things across the society. So, it gives powers in the hand of everyone to do things that were not possible because of lack of resources or lack of ability to engage experts. You have access to every expert at hand. You can use them to build things that you could probably or possibly could not build maybe in the past. I think that's a very freeing thought.
Right.
And I think if everybody starts building, I don't know where this will take the civilization.
Right. But that's a good part of it. I mean, how do there are a lot of jobs that will be displaced or maybe displaced because, this whole quest of AI to artificial general intelligence to artificial super intelligence and the maturity of AI, a lot of jobs, a lot of people are doing, in the mid-level, senior level, are also at risk. So, how do you transform, this whole landscape of building skills? Where do we build skills? Because we are seeing a lot of things which, maybe jobs will not be displaced, some jobs, but instead of 5,000 people, you may be able to do it with 50 people. So what happens to the rest of that community who are also skilled?
Right. I think jobs will be lost for sure. But jobs will be evolved as well. And I think any transformation requires friction. You're not transforming if there is no friction.
You're right.
So I think the initial stage will see a lot of good things happening and a lot of bad things happening in parallel.
Right.
But over a period of time, I'm an optimist, and I think ultimately, just like industrial revolution, a lot of previous jobs went away, but a lot of new jobs got created. Human mind is such that wherever it is placed, it creates a new normal, right? So I think we will all start building on top of this new normal, and we will all start adapting to this new normal and seeing how new things can be put up, and I think a lot of new things and new ways of doing things and things that we cannot imagine right now are all going to come about very soon.
Right. So, we hear a lot about this terms like AI, AGI, ASI. A lot of people who may be following, who are following my podcast, may also heard of these terminologies, but they may not be very clear about the definitions of it. So if you can explain to my viewers, like, what is AGI, what is ASI, and how far are we from that super intelligence?
I think we have models now which are very intelligent. They can do things as good as we can do, or maybe slightly better in many areas.
Right.
I think what is being termed as AGI, and it's a free-floating terminology, right? So a lot of people have their own meanings to it. But
And what is AGI? For those who may not be fully aware of these acronyms.
AGI is artificial general intelligence, AI is artificial intelligence, and ASI is artificial super intelligence.
Right.
So AI is getting better than us in doing things.
Right.
But it is not generally intelligent in everything right now, and it is getting there. General intelligence means without you putting in a prompt or giving it context, it is able to articulate how to do things, what to do, and it will plan and do things better than all humans can do, right? And that's artificial general intelligence, where it's almost like common sense, right? So where AI will be able to do things on its own.
Right.
But artificial super intelligence is one level above, where it is not only doing things, but it is doing things which we can't even understand, right? It's like...
Give me an example.
For example, when you're typing, you have a dog and you're typing on your computer, the dog doesn't know what you're doing, right?
Right.
It's your intelligence is much more superior to the dog's intelligence, so the dog has no way to comprehend what you're doing. It's a complete dimensional shift of intelligence.
Right.
Same way, artificial super intelligence is something which, when it happens, it would mean that we would not be able to understand what exactly is going on in these systems and what they are doing and what they are capable of doing.
Right.
They might end up evolving their own languages, and they can do things and tell us things which we didn't know, maybe crack physics problems that were impossible to crack. A lot of things, right? It becomes a sort of a supreme intelligence which, starts evolving itself on its own, right? It feeds into itself, it starts looking at problems on its own, it starts evolving on its own, and that's ASI, it is a being in itself.
Right. And how far are we
I think we're pretty far.
Getting there?
We are pretty far from ASI. But I think AGI can happen soon, maybe in next 5-7 years. Everybody has their own take on it, but I think maybe in 5-7 years we might have AGI.
Right. And in all this, this whole paradigm of the AI landscape shifting, affecting or challenging a lot of business models and approaches, how do you see impacting the traditional large monolithic Indian IT services organizations?
I think IT services per se would evolve. I think they will also get into work of actually delivering AI for customers, right? Because everybody would want to implement AI systems, and I think IT services would be sort of more involved in delivering AI for customers rather than the traditional software, the traditional database software or traditional application software. All that probably is fairly going to be autonomously done in very soon. Very soon we will see that systems are building systems, and I think building the systems that will build systems is what IT services companies will do. But I think there will be a churn in IT services businesses for sure, because I think coding per se is a skill that is probably the first skill that AI has really picked up very, very well.
So do you think we would need the 600,000, 400,000 army of IT software engineers that these large companies have, or you see a shrink in that?
I think it will become more like an agency business. Just like the digital agencies and marketing agencies are there, 200, 500,000 people, companies.
Right.
They do take care of the entire marketing arm of large companies, enterprise companies. I think IT services will become that zone. It will be highly specialized, highly consultative, very sharp people will be part of it. But I think it will no longer remain a mass job provider.
Right.
It will stay relevant for sure.
Right. I'm going to change the trajectory of our conversation a little bit to come a little bit on your personal side. So, you went to IIT Bombay, right?
Yeah.
Tell me something about how it changed your thinking, and from the point you went in, those 4 years, and then you've been through a journey yourself as an entrepreneur. To share with us a little bit, and for our viewers, that whole journey and experience, and the different stages in which you dealt with entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so going to IIT was, I think, the best thing that happened to me. I came from a small town. My education has been in what we call tier 3, tier 4 cities of India.
Right.
So, and we are from the era where internet was not there, right?
Right.
At least not available to mass public at that
Right.
time in the 90s. So,
Right.
your exposure was very limited. You didn't know much about the world. Of course, you read papers and you watched news,
Right.
but that was it, right? You didn't know what career options were there. You didn't know how the world is moving, how the economies work, and there's so much lack of awareness. If you look at today's generation, the awareness and knowledge in a small kid is probably more than what I had when I was in my 20s.
Right.
So, given that, going to IIT was extremely eye-opening for me because you were exposed to people who knew much more than you. And in general, the level of intelligence was very high because all of them had come through a competitive process.
Right.
So, and all of them were pretty ambitious, very disciplined, very hardworking. So, everybody was looking forward to build something, create a path for themselves, and there were a lot of exciting talks, in the evenings, post-academic hours.
Right.
And they were very energetic. They would drive your passions. You would want to also understand how somebody's saying something, and they've read something, so you would also want to go and read it. So your overall exposure would increase a lot. So for me, it was like when I went in, and as I came out, my level of intelligence and my level of awareness was at a different level. And luckily for me, that was the time when the dot-com era happened.
Right.
Right. So, and there were a lot of entrepreneurs, ex-IIT alumni, who came to the institute at that time, and they had done startups. Some of them have exited startups, and for us, it was like a very, very new term.
Right.
And Indian startup ecosystem was not at all formed
Right.
in the late 90s, but there were still startups out of our time.
Right.
Maybe 5-6 startups which started in the campus.
Right.
I didn't start in the campus. I took up a job for a couple of months.
Right.
But then me and a few of my batchmates, we would get together and we thought we wanted to solve a problem. And this was an era of internet being a premium commodity. It was not like a 150 Mbps connection. We were all using dial-ups and stuff like that. So there was this notion of bandwidth, and there were companies which were like exchanges of bandwidth. Just like you have stock exchange, you had bandwidth exchanges, and bandwidth was a premium commodity. So congestion of bandwidth was a problem, and that's how we first started. We wanted to solve that problem.
Right.
And back in the day, the routers were not intelligent, and we started to make them intelligent. That's the first startup we did.
Right.
Unfortunately for us, there were not a lot of investors at that time.
Right.
I think 4-5 VCs were there, but we had a sort of term sheet from one of the venture capitalists back in 2000. But then .com burst happened and that VC closed down. So our idea of building this intelligent router never really happened.
Mm-hmm.
And but we continued. I and my brother, who was part of the founding team, continued the journey. My batchmates had to move out because at that time struggling to build a startup was not a very welcome thing in the society. So they had their pressures and they had to move on.
Right.
But because my brother was elder to me, so he gave me the confidence that we can build this, and we continued the journey. We transformed that company, the product company, into a product engineering company where we started building products for other companies, and that's the journey we took on. And fortunately for us, because of the IIT alumni network and one thing led to other, very slowly we built an enterprise which had 300 400 people
Right.
in the next 5 6 years, and we were building products for other companies.
Right.
And everything sort of in my life has dovetailed. One thing has led to other. So because we were building for products for other people, we got tremendous exposure at that time on how products are built, and especially these were valley companies,
Right.
European companies that we were building for. It gave us the exposure of the product life cycle. How do you think? How do you productize it? How do you do GTMs?
Right.
What does it take to do it? And we were young, and we learned a lot in those 5 6 years.
Right.
And that ultimately led into a series of startups we did. Currently, I'm doing a company called as TechMonk, which I
Right.
started 4 years back. And we are trying to automate the entire sales and marketing engine using AI, so the entire customer life cycle. So I think the passion of building products goes back to those early days when we were building products for other people in a company called as Ambrosia Infotech.
Right.
So, and in between we did a couple of more startups. I was involved in a startup which almost was the gateway of apps in India in the 2010 decade.
Right.
And we felt that India would need that additional offline push to become online, and this is pre-demonetization, where India was a cash economy.
Right.
And there were not many credit card users, smartphone users were limited. So
Right.
we created this pan-India network of selling apps at retail, and it was almost like when we were selling them an app, they were getting exposed to the app world, and we were essentially playing a part in digitizing the country. And in that startup, we had 5 million customers, and it scaled up quite well. So these are some of the startup things that I've done in the past.
Right. Right. So as you're building TechMonk, I'm sure you're consumers of LLMs and the GPTs of the world and the Anthropics and so on and so forth. My question to you is, the kind of startups in the AI ecosystem that we are seeing in India are more consumer-led. We are consuming this infrastructure which this large American or Chinese companies are building. They are controlling the LLMs, right? So how do you see the Indian landscape? Would we ever get to build our own, LLMs and why not?
I think maybe the way it will evolve is that LLMs might become a commodity. It is already becoming a commodity.
Right.
So you don't talk about LLMs. Maybe you won't talk about LLMs in the future. You will talk about solutions in the future. What you're building on top of it, right? Just like when we started, optical fiber companies were very big, right? These were the companies who were connecting the internet. They had laid down these fibers across oceans, and they obviously controlled the pipe, right, from where the data is flowing. However, then on top of it came the hardware infrastructure of how do you deliver internet, right? The routers and the telecom companies. Slowly, I think the industry keeps on taking an abstraction. I think whoever is the foundational layer, obviously they will always be relevant. I'm not saying OpenAI or Anthropic and all these guys are not relevant. They are the cutting edge, right? They're building the core infrastructure, and they are the ones who are bringing intelligence as a commodity. However, when everybody starts building on top of it, I think abstraction will start happening, and things that we build on top of this will be even more fascinating. And I think the over-the-top applications, I think if you look at past patterns, I believe India can do extremely well in the over-the-app applications, which we can build on top of these LLM layers.
Right. So, in terms of the investing opportunities, for AI companies in India, what sort of companies do you think would be invested? I mean, with your knowledge of having raised substantial amount of money in your entrepreneurial life, if you had to invest today in an AI company, what kind of companies would you like to invest?
I think it's an evolving ecosystem. I think people are trying to understand, how it will evolve. What are the companies that will work? What are the companies that will not work? It's very early stage to see where all of this is going, right? Even in the internet era, if you remember, there was a lot of funding happened on eyeballs. You know how many page visitors you have,
Right.
and then it involved to how many engaged page visitors you have.
Right.
Then it evolved into how much revenue from these visitors. It's an enterprise, it's a business. So I think it will keep on evolving. I think we are in the early stage of seeing this. I think everybody is taking their bets, and I think as time progresses, their bets will become sharper and sharper. From my point of view, I think we are looking at an era of you know end-to-end applications or full stack applications. I think point applications or applications which solve one simple thing, and which is the typical SaaS story, right? You solve one simple thing and you scale it. I think that probably might be at risk because LLMs are getting more powerful and they might do those small things themselves. You don't really need an application for that. So the concept of application for this, application for that, and scale it up to 10,000 customers, I think that probably is not the theme that is going to work now.
Right.
I think probably the theme, at least for me, is if you're building something, you need to build it end to end. Right from the start point to end point. You need to create this loops and flywheels so that it becomes a sort of an organism that is working on its own.
Right.
And I think we at TechMonk are doing this for the consumer side of things.
Right.
We are building an end-to-end platform where everything that you need to do with the customer and the customer needs from you, all that interaction, all that processes, all that workflows, acquisition, retention, support, lifetime value, all of it, we are trying to bring it under one roof and fully automated. So it's almost like a full stack organism in itself.
Right. So what stops from, let's say, OpenAI or Anthropic or the bigger ones to build what you're trying to build? I mean, how are you protected?
See, if they want to build solutions on top of their commodity, I think then who are their customers? Then they'll become single point solution providers to everything, right? And then I think we are pretty far from that because they are right now focused on taking this to the next level. There's a race going on between these companies to go deeper into what they are themselves doing.
Right.
What we are doing is creating a layer on top of it, and it is not a single step layer, right? It's a very complicated organism that we are building on top of the intelligence that they are providing.
Right.
And it requires a lot of thinking. It requires a lot of steps to be able to deliver this, and the intelligence alone is not able to will not be able to do this.
Right.
Somebody will have to do the engineering on top of that, right?
Right.
And at this point, I don't think they would be focused on creating these solutions. Yes, whatever intelligence automatically is able to do, it will keep on evolving that.
Right.
So their direction is to create and expand the intelligence that they're building. And along the way, if something gets solved and doesn't need an app anymore, then it doesn't need an app anymore. But they are not building for industries, so they are not trying to solve the problem of creating a recruiter.
Right. Right.
They are not creating an HR system. They are not creating a sales and marketing system.
Right.
But which is why I said, an app for this, an app for that, and pointed SaaS plays. I think they are at risk because as intelligence keeps going further, this single step, easy applications, which are very good because they scale and they're very useful, but they might be easily available with the LLMs as they evolve. So you don't need them anymore.
Right, right. So that leads me to my next question, which is, we're talking about AI, the consumption, and in every sphere of life, whether it's government, whether it is consumers, whether it's anything that you want to even build your own productivity, your own velocity in doing, your own work, your own workflow. Now, how safe do you think is AI? And talk us through a little bit about your view on AI security, what you at TechMonk are applying. I'm sure you're getting these questions from your customers and your prospects as well. So I wanted to know a little bit on your thoughts around AI safety and security.
I think there are a lot of risk involved with completely automating your workflows with AI.
Right.
Unless you've thought through the whole security, governance, control in thorough detail. And we've been from day one very conscious of this, because the moment you're automating, systems which are not rule-based. Rule-based systems, that these are the rules that are there, and this is how it will work, right? 1 + 1 = 2. It is not thinking, right? In current agentic systems, a fully automated agentic system is actually thinking like we think, right? May not be exact 1:1 mapping, but you can visualize it like that.
Right.
That it is thinking, it is doing things on intelligent decisions along the way. So there are a lot of things that can go wrong. First, it can go beyond its the goals that you have, or the boundaries that you have set it for it, right? So how do you prevent the agentic system to stay bounded? What are the checks and balances that you need to do for that? Secondly, if there is a lot of proprietary data that is there in your system, right? Your customers' data, your PII, or any other proprietary data, how do you make sure that is not getting leaked? And that is also not getting transmitted to the inference layer, or in simple words, it is not going to the LLM and getting exposed.
Right.
Then how do you sort of prevent these intelligence to hallucinate? Many times they can create things, they can hallucinate, which means if you say, who has done this, they might not know the answer, but they might say John Doe did this, just out of their own. It's almost like lying, right? Hallucination is probably equivalent to lying. So there's a risk of these things doing things which are imagined, right? And reporting on imagined stuff. So how do you prevent that? How do you prevent a hacker from coming and prompting your systems to take data out? So there are a lot of steps that go into securing these aspects. Plus, we've created a system of automatically testing these agents. So as you deploy agents, how do you test it 360? You cannot manually test it. So how do you generate agent testing scripts and agent testing use cases? So we have automated that entire testing layer as well. Another important thing is, so they are working to do the processes, whatever you've automated. So how do you see what they've done, how they've thought, what are the inputs, what are the outputs? So observability and traceability becomes a very important aspect of this. So it's a very holistic approach. There are multiple dimensions to this, but one can really take care of all this and reach the level of safety and security, which at least you can sleep well at night.
Right. But do you think, with AI, the concentration of power and capital will only be concentrated, and at some point people may not be required to do jobs? Governments will be super rich. We'll all get free money to live. I'll get free money to do 10 podcast shoots a day and, sleep late and have someone come and edit it for me free. And the government pays for all of this. Do you see that kind of a thing, abundance happening in AI?
It might happen, but it is not happening in the next 2-3 years or 5 years, right? Okay, it's a long-term thing. So it might happen. It might also lead into, for example, if you were to build something, and whether it is technology or marketing or sales or even a business plan, anything that you're building right now or creating or doing work, right? What would take, say, hypothetically 100 people 1 month can happen with one person in a month, right? So the other way of looking at it is that it is extremely democratizing, right?
Right.
So if you are thinking, oh, I can't do that, that
Right.
is no longer applicable because you can
Right.
do it.
Right.
And if that is the world we are entering, then everybody can do everything, right?
Right.
So it's almost equalizing a lot of things. I think, of course, certainly some people will get wealthier because of how the large language models are owned by certain people, right?
Right.
But that also creates an opportunity for others to build on top of it,
Correct.
right? And move as fast as, I think it's almost like traveling in the initial days without airplanes and trains and stuff like that.
Right.
Was in itself a big problem, unsolved problem. Now we don't think going from Mumbai to Dubai or any other place. It's almost like part of our life, right? And that is extremely powerful if you think of it.
Right.
I think in the same way, I think just like internet, traveling, all these things have become and enabled us to do many more fascinating things. I think AI will enable us to do things which have not been done so far. And I think everybody has the power to do them now. Because resource as a concept is a completely changed concept. There is no resource constraint anymore.
Yeah, but then this is a particular segment of the society you're talking about. What happens to the bottom of the pyramid? The blue collar, or like people who are living today pretty much like in menial jobs. So what happens to that layer? They could be faced with a jobless situation. They may not be as skilled.
I think
to
right
find
now
another
the
job.
challenge is with the white collar jobs, right? Because intelligence is getting commoditized. I think
Right.
physical work, I think, is not going away for quite some time. I think the mental work is what is being threatened, right? So if you are a developer, if you are a marketer, if you are a finance person, all these jobs are becoming extremely sophisticated because of AI, right? They are automating a lot of the work that needed to happen. So if you want to write a business plan, there's a certain amount of research you have to do. There's a certain amount. I think all that you can just ask an agent to do, and it'll do all that for you. So
Right.
what probably would take you 15 days to build, you would end up building it in 3 hours now.
Right.
So that's what is happening right now. It is the intellectual world that is getting challenged, right?
Right. Right.
And people involved in physical jobs,
Right.
I think their challenge comes later.
Right. Right. I was hearing a podcast where George Hinton is regarded as the godfather of AI, and he was mentioning the safest job if you need to skill yourself is on being a plumber. So,
Yeah.
what's your view on that? I mean,
No, which is true because I think risk is if you don't move, right? 100% there is no doubt about it. AI is going to take your job.
right.
But if you move, if you evolve, and which
Right.
I'm sure everybody will, right? That's the paranoia that is there, which will drive us to evolve, right? I think if we evolve, I think we are getting into a situation where we will all be doing much more and much more fascinating things. Is my take on it.
Right.
And of course, as I said, physical jobs, the intelligence required to do these physical jobs, we might take it trivial, but the AI today cannot do it at all, right? Plumbing cannot be replicated by AI so easily.
Right.
Because it is internal subconscious intelligence that helps us do those things, right? So I think definitely physical jobs going away is quite futuristic.
Right. So, given the world we are in now and the way we are looking and consuming AI, and in our own specific ways, how do you see the future of learning, the future of higher education, shifting or changing with the advent of AI?
I think it will evolve for sure.
Right.
But see, if you want to be a physicist, you need to learn physics, right? From the foundation of it, from the basics of physics. And then, of course, use AI to empower you to do things faster.
Right.
So the foundation layer of whatever you want to be, that has to be there. Otherwise, how will you even use the tools?
Right.
So I think education per se obviously would have basic skills in particular streams that would remain important, but the way of setting up things might be very different.
Right.
I think it will become more concept oriented
Right.
rather than memory oriented.
Correct.
Have you understood it rather than have you memorized it? I think
Right.
because memory is no longer, because everything you can just ask and right? So
Right.
there's no real advantage now. So however, you need to know the concept. So if I want to use AI to build systems, I need to fundamentally know how systems work.
Mhm.
I couldn't be knowing it superficially and drive AI to do things, because
Right.
it is anyways it can do all the superficial things on its own.
Right.
So I think we are entering an era of experts. So you need to be an expert of whatever you want to do,
Right.
and then of course there is a place for you.
Right. 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 Arun, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It was lovely chatting to you, talking to you, and good luck with what you're building and in TechMonk. And we'll continue the conversation on the other side of the camera.
Thank you so much, Shubhadeep. Lovely talking to you.
Bye.